Hey, what is up guys? I'm KBHD here, and I'm here at CES 2014, and here everyone seems to have a 4K TV. Samsung's got one, LG's got one, Panasonic's got one. Even companies that I didn't know make TVs have a 4K TV here. But what about shooting 4K? What about actually recording it and getting the whole system from the camera to the TV? It doesn't really matter if you go above 4K. I've seen an 8K TV here already, but nothing shoots 8K. So let's take a look at our 4K shooting options here at CES. All right, now I'm gonna start in a weird place. I'm gonna start with the Samsung Galaxy Note 3, because if you remember my review of that, this phone has a camera that shoots 4K video. But here's the thing about that. The resolution is great and everything, and it is definitely 4K, but the Galaxy Note 3 still has a pretty small sensor compared to those dedicated cameras. It's just a phone. And the 4K video it shoots is also at a slightly lower bit rate than the 4K from dedicated cameras, and all this basically means a little bit lower density of information. Now, it still takes up plenty of space, more than 1080p footage, as you can see by the live counter in the upper right-hand corner of the frame, but it kind of falls apart with any real shaky movement. But hey, that's a start, and it looks great on 4K displays, much better than 1080p video. And this phone starts at around $600 off contract. Now, a big part of CES, as we know, is starting off this ridiculous new technology that may seem crazy at first, but that hopefully comes down in price over the coming months and years. So now that we've seen all these 4K TVs at last year's CES, and we're even seeing 4K monitors now, we're gonna start to see more 4K cameras this time around. But their prices and convenience for the regular person are still a bit much. But this is CES, so we can take that with a grain of salt. Take the Canon booth, for example. They didn't have anything new to show in the 4K stuff, but they had their existing 4K solutions on display, the Canon C500 and the Canon 1DC. The C500 is a great example of what I'm talking about when I say it's not convenient to shoot 4K right now. This thing is a beast with a beast of a lens to match. Do not look up the price tag of this lens unless you're sitting down. But anyway, the C500 will shoot 4K, but not to internal storage. You need an external recorder that can record 60 frames per second through a single cable, or 120 frames per second over a pair of HDSDI cables. But just look at how much gear you need here on this camera to shoot 4K. It is incredible quality, and it's massive dynamic range and very high bit rate, but this setup you're looking at right here, hopefully you're sitting down, is over $40,000. The Canon 1DC, though, is a DSLR that shoots 4K video with a full-frame sensor, and it's probably the most reasonable, really high-quality 4K option for a lot of people to consider shooting with. It takes SD cards, it shoots 4K at 24 frames per second, but still, just the body of this camera without this awesome glass will cost you $12,000. But I also visited the Sony booth today, as you guys told me to do on Twitter, and there were some slightly more interesting options. Of course, they have their current FS700, no surprise. It's a great camera, but it can only shoot 4K when you add a massive recorder to the back. It doesn't shoot 4K internally. So that makes it a huge and also slightly more expensive, over $9,000 4K shooting setup. But they also had a slightly smaller 4K camera that we've seen on Amazon actually for a bit, and it's a bit easier to hold than the FS700, a little bit more compact, more ergonomic, and a few people are already shooting with it, and it records 4K at 60 frames per second to internal storage. So you don't need any extra cables or fancy recorders or anything, but it's still a bit steep at $5,000. But at CES, Sony has introduced this. This is the first 4K Sony Handycam. So the Handycam line, as we know, is already famous for putting the best video quality in the palm of the hand and being extremely easy to shoot with. So this is actually interesting. That's the combo we're looking for. Now, it has a 1-inch sensor, so the same size as my pocket camera, the RX100. In fact, I think they said it was the same sensor, so it's a bit small, and that may sacrifice dynamic range or a little bit of low-light performance, but it's putting 4K video shooting in a compact and easy-to-use format. That's a balance that's been really hard to strike. And it keeps the price a bit lower than the other options we've looked at, and it's going to start, supposedly, at $2,000. Now, it's no Galaxy Note 3 price, but it's way better than Galaxy Note 3 quality. And Sony is really proud of this, and I think it's a great first step towards a ton of people starting to shoot 4K video to catch up with all these crazy fancy 4K TVs we have.